Twilight, the 2008 vampire smash movie grossed over $400 million, ignited a global brand and massive fan base, and garnered an Academy Award nomination. And who was the directing brainchild behind this mega hit? Catherine Hardwicke. At the time, it was only her fourth directing project after spending 15 years as a production designer. Catherine dropped by the Mill Valley Film Festival for a screening of her latest project and also to teach a masterclass. She shares what it really takes to bring films like 13, Lords of Dogtown, Twilight, and Miss You Already to the big screen.
It's a big goofball.
Big complexity.
Oh my God! But not before I first bump into her on the red carpet.
Well, you know, one of my favorite things when people have walked out of the screening, like one guy told me, he said, man, I reached out to my best friend. I said, we got to bury the hatchet, man. We got to hang out again. And other girlfriends have told me they walked out of there with their best friends. They were laughing, remembering all the cool stuff they did. Or they called their best friend and said, let's go on a road trip. So I like that people come out of here embracing life, feeling like life affirming and wanting to connect and share more with their friends.
Sam, I want a blue cap.
Just so you know, with your type of chemo, there's only about a 20% chance it'll save your hair.
There's so many things that define us as human beings, our intelligence, our personalities. Why is gender such a defining thing?
That's such a great topic because, you know, we've been finding out that there's a stereotype that we're all used to, the stereotype. If we see a man walk out in a police uniform, okay, your brain doesn't have to work hard because that's the stereotype. If you see a woman in a police uniform or a pilot's uniform, your brain actually has to work harder because we have been programmed to accept this cliche. And now what we're doing is trying to figure out how do we break out of that cliche. Does every movie director have to be pale and male? No. There's diversity out in the world. We want to encourage all kinds of beautiful diversity.
Catherine Hardwicke.
Okay, next day, I'm sitting in her masterclass.
And they wrote it for, you know, with the British sense of humor and wit. So I went over to London and I'm just taking pictures, you know, with my camera of like cool things. Like I love this theater kind of represents this too, the juxtaposition of old and new, you know. And I was an architect and I just loved what's going on in London. You'd have the old train station things and then a brand new, exciting modern building in there. So I thought this will be fun if I can kind of capture that. So this was a lookbook that we made for Drew Barrymore's character. And the thing that's kind of interesting to directors out there, Drew had already signed on to do the movie at this time, but I still had, you know, was trying to keep her excited about it and be sure that she would finish her contract and really show up for the movie, because as you know, people can drop out and all that. So I would always, you know, be researching, here's a cool houseboat I found, here's a cool palette, a color scheme. Hey, I like your hair when it was dark, and that'll be interesting, different from, you know, Millie's look. So, you know, I would send her like fun things like that every week or two, you know, just to keep her excited about it. Try new things in the audition and throw stuff out with them. Like I worked with David O. Russell, and he's, you know, probably people know this already, but David is very spontaneous, and he will, in the middle of a shooting, you know, he would just tell people, okay, now the camera's gonna chase you and we're gonna run down the street and all that. And that's one thing that's great about that. It keeps the moments, keeps the energy up. In his movies, there's a lot of electricity, and you really feel like you're in that moment. So I try things like that with my actors, even in the audition process. And if they can't go with the flow, get somebody that can.
Thank you. Of course, we can style it any which way. Oh, sorry. That's a little bit 1980s political lesbian.
Boring.
This is how it looked when we shot the scene in the movie. And yes, Francis de la Tour is for real shaving Toni's head right there, one take on camera. Yeah. So this is a chart that I made, and yes, there are other department heads that, you know, would typically maybe help you make these charts, but on a low-budget movie, they don't come on until the last minute. So you have. So I'm like, okay, do it yourself.
This was a low-budget movie. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, it was like $6 million. Gradual deterioration of the house. I even wanted the house to become more messy, you know, as she went further in treatment. You know, so we had all the details. So I laminated this card that you saw and kept it in my little, you know, not a fanny pack, but whatever, you know, little purse that I wear around on the set, so that every scene I'd have to pull it out. Have I got it right, you know? So we found an old manor, this place called Bricket Wood, that was shut down. It had a manor house. It had, you know, some office facilities and everything. So if you see this list of all these sets, I figured out how to shoot all those scenes in this one place, you know, which was kind of cool. And that kept us from moving and wasting time and money moving. So these are some of the scenes, like the hospice scene was shot here. Let's see. Does that go forward? Oh, the hospital scenes I built into some rooms, built the doctor's offices, you know, the oncology unit, the chemotherapy unit. Even there was just one little part that had a modern skylight. I used that for the hospital. Put signs up, used the manor house for the, the hospice. Use the interior. There was even like an old English-looking bed and breakfast there that we used.
Do you trust me?
In theory.
Then close your eyes.
I'd seen vampires that lived in the dark alleys of like Paris and all that, but I'd never seen a vampire that lived in the gorgeous Pacific Northwest. So, you know, I had to go in there and just cut massive ideas of the baseball sequence, massive amount of special effects, visual effects, snow and everything, to get it in 4 days. I had to get it down to the number they wanted. A car is very kind of boring to film. There's a 1 camera position, 2 camera position, 3 camera position, and it's expensive. So I thought, I want some of these scenes to be more cinematic, to get outside, you know, in the woods and use a techno crane and do something cool. So I wanted the feeling of being in love with a vampire, a magical creature. So, you know, I kind of came up with this sequence, and then people were like, well, how are you going to do it? So this is my little sketch as a director, you know, okay, I'm going to start A, at the Cullen house, B, the actual tree at the Cullen house, C, I'm going to go to this other location I found called Cape Horn. The middle section is going to be second unit. This, you know, then the final thing is going to be with the helicopter. So something as crude as this was actually a very useful diagram that we used in every meeting. Like, okay, it looks like a chicken drew it, but still, it was useful. We used it as a reference every time we met about it, and that way people understood what I was thinking of in my mind. And I like to be right next to the actors when they're filming. So I rode on motorcycles and skateboards and everything next to the actors. And one day I'm out in the water, and Heath Ledger paddles out, and he's like, he didn't know I was out there because I just had a little, you know, hoodie on, like a wetsuit. He couldn't recognize me. And I heard him say, this water's too cold, man. This, I'm getting out. I'm not doing this scene. And then I swim up to him. Hey, Heath, isn't it neat out here? I've been out here 8 hours. Isn't it awesome? He's like, he looks at me. He's like, oh, well, let's start filming, Catherine. I was like, great, you know. Then when she meets the bad girl, her world becomes more golden and more like a commercial and beautiful. And then the color chroma, we increased it so that it became more saturated, almost hyper-saturated, almost garish as things got worse and she started taking more drugs. Then by the end, when Evie, the bad girl, breaks up with her, the color drains away. So here you're going to see 13 in 30 seconds. And see if you can observe this, what I'm talking about.
I gained tremendous new respect for what Catherine and other directors do. It takes immense effort to make everything look effortless on screen.
In our lives that are beautiful, and like you seem like an amazing person. I'd love to hear your whole life story right now. You're asking such intelligent questions. Let's do a movie. But I think that, you know, there's so many beautiful stories to explore, and it's been kind of proven that when a female directs or female writes, there are more roles for women. The stories go maybe deeper emotionally, and, you know, humanitarian issues, all kinds of things. So, and fun stuff. I mean, our movie's funny too.
Well, I'm not a filmmaker. I came out of the masterclass inspired by Catherine Hardwicke's passion, determination, relentless, never give up attitude. She's a reminder that ideas are a very small part of the creative process. It is the ability to execute in the face of seemingly endless obstacles, fair and unfair, that transforms vision into reality.
A lifetime in the making.